Hey y'all, TRG here, and welcome back to another video. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about a tropical storm that is likely in the western Gulf of Mexico, as well as two other AOIs out in the main development region, and mentioning the AOI in the eastern Pacific. Let's go right ahead and go on into today's video. I want to start here with our upper level water vapor imagery. So we have a system coming off the coastline of the Carolinas out here, has a pretty good radar presentation to it, but is not an AOI on the NHC. We have a previous AOI up here that is now an extratropical system. If it didn't have extratropical characteristics, it probably could have made a run for tropical storm status, but it transitioned too rapidly into an extratropical system. We have two AOIs out here, one AOI here that has about a 40% chance of forming, and then another one right here that has about, I think it's a 30% chance of forming. We'll look at that in just a second. And then we have our two main features here are in the Gulf. These are going to be what we watch the most. Now, this isn't expected to form into a tropical storm, but it is going to be a key play on what could potentially form into a tropical storm, which is this whole area here. This is Invest 91L right here, and then this was Invest 90L, but it is rapidly deteriorated and is pretty much just a blob now. So this blob is going to move southwest, merge with what is probably eventually going to be Tropical Storm Francine as it moves up to the northwest. Those are going to merge in the western Gulf of Mexico, and that's where our biggest question mark is at the moment. Some models take this into southern Texas and kind of northeastern Mexico, but the majority of our models and almost all of our ensembles take this right up towards Texas and Louisiana. So this is going to be the main thing we watch over the next week or so. These two systems out here are both going to move up to the northwest, and both of them will have a run at tropical storm status. However, I think one or the other is going to become dominant. So either the eastern one here is going to merge with the western one, and that western one's going to try to form into a tropical storm, or vice versa. But I think eventually one of those will have a pretty good chance at becoming our next named storm. Here's our National Hurricane Center. I don't want to dive too far into this without looking at the official NHC. So this has a 20%, I thought it was 30, it's actually a 20% chance for forming in the next 7 days. And this has a 40% chance of forming in the next 7 days. So most likely this is going to just kind of fizzle out as this one takes the main potential to potentially become a tropical storm. And that, I don't think that will head towards land. It will aim towards the US like this, but it should go right out to sea, something like that. So I don't think that's going to be an interest for land impacts. This, however, is a completely different story. That is Invest 91L right there, has a 70% chance of forming in the next 7 days, a 50% chance of forming within the next 48 hours as it will slowly progress off to the northwest, eventually merge with that system, and then its best opportunity to form will be generally somewhere out in this vicinity here. I do think they will expand that AOI more off to the northeast as we get closer and closer and some more uncertainties get worked out. And I'm just really going to mention this. I don't think we'll look at many models for this, if any at all, but there is a 30% chance for a tropical depression or storm to form in the eastern Pacific here, and that may attempt at making its way into Baja California, but at the moment that's not going to be something we have to worry about. We'll just monitor that, and that's not going to be the main focus of today's video. Before we dive on into the rest of this video and really get into all of our models, because we have an Invest, which means we can dive on into a bunch of hurricane models, make sure you've hit that like button, subscribe to the channel with the notification bell set to all, and especially share this video with your family, friends, and on social media to help spread weather awareness. Let's continue on with today's video. Let's start off with our GFS model run here. This is your 12Z, which is typically one of your at least more accurate model runs that the GFS does render in here. You can see both of our AOI is quite clearly distincted here on the GFS model. One here, our AOI in the Eastern Pacific, and then of course what is probably going to eventually become a Tropical Storm Francine out here in the Gulf of Mexico. This is 48 hours from now, so this is here September 9th, right around 8 p.m. Eastern. Let's go ahead and pull this out much further here, see if anything develops other than our tropical storm there in Texas, and eventually moves into Louisiana. Look at that. Wow. That is interesting. So actually, the GFS has our other system, our further east system, developing out here in the dead center main development region, and our one that the NHC currently has at a 40% chance. It makes a run for tropical storm status, and it might just barely get there on this particular run here on the morning of September 11th. But if we just pull this out further here, I want to see if it can reform. Well, it tries its best to reform, but it kind of just meanders into the Caribbean, and not much more to worry about that. And then the GFS kind of just does what the GFS does and turns this into a major hurricane out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And then starts moving at freaking southwest, because that's where tropical storms normally move, southwest. That's just the GFS being the GFS, y'all. If you go beyond 180 hours out on these model runs, most of the time you're going to see some of the most weird and ridiculous stuff. But I definitely wouldn't be betting on that forming into a hurricane at the moment. But I do think we'll see at least one of these make a solid run for tropical storm status. And I do think we'll see a tropical storm in the western Gulf of Mexico that's either going to head into southern Texas, or it's going to head into kind of southeast Texas into southwest Louisiana. And then that AOI out there in the far eastern Pacific, I think that could also make a run for tropical storm status. But at the moment, I'm not all that worried about that storm in the eastern Pacific, just because it seems like if it does become a big issue, the worst it's going to get to is a very low-end tropical storm status. So I'm not really that worried about that tropical system in the eastern Pacific at this moment. So this is our old European deterministic model run from last night. There has been uptrends to the 12Z. However, I can't show that because it's not rendered in on tropical tidbits. But if I just go ahead and pull this out 48 hours, you'll see that AOI out here in the eastern Pacific. It does not do anything on the European model. I think that's more of a realistic scenario there. And if we just pull the European out even some more here, you'll see this, the western AOI right here, the one that the NHC thinks has a better chance of forming, actually does get to a tropical storm status here on the European model run. And then our other one, the further east one, just doesn't do anything. You'll see it track right there. It does not get to a tropical storm on this particular model run. I think that is a much more realistic scenario than what the GFS was painting. Pull it all the way back now. Pay attention to the Gulf of Mexico. You'll see what was Invest 90L and what is currently Invest 91L. And watch those two merge. Now, keep in mind, this is our older European model run. Our new European model actually takes a tropical storm right on into Texas and Louisiana at around a 987-ish millibar. So your newest European model run is a lot more aggressive. This older one just takes a broad tropical low into eastern Mexico. So I just looked at the European model run, the 12Z. It takes a 992 tropical storm right on into southwestern Louisiana, which would still be a mid-tier tropical storm. But here's your European AI model. This is a little confusing because I don't use it a whole lot, but it does take, well, look at that. It's pretty much a little bit less aggressive of the normal 12Z European model run. And this is the AI model run from yesterday, which this might be one of the first models that even picked up on a tropical storm potential for Louisiana there. Quite clearly takes a 994 tropical storm right on into south central Louisiana. That is a very real possibility, anywhere from eastern Louisiana all the way into the east coastline of Mexico. This whole area is open for a tropical storm landfall, most specifically the far northern side right up here. That's where I am really watching for a tropical storm to make landfall as we go towards the mid and latter half of this upcoming week. But let's go ahead and finish this European AI model run here. And I think it kind of meanders a tropical depression, maybe not even a tropical depression out here in the middle of the main development region, but really not much to speak of in the main development region on your AI European model run. All right, so I'm not even gonna lie, I have not checked this. This is the 12Z, so your newest icon model run. I have not looked at this one. Wow, quite a gracious. That's a lot of areas. Holy cow. Okay, well, this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas of interest here. So that's actually quite a lot more than what the NHC currently has I think that's just the icon model being a bit too aggressive with this, but the icon does take a 991 into south central Louisiana. It forms a tropical storm off the coastline of southern Baja California at 990 millibars. It forms, looks like, two borderline tropical storms. One actually goes into the Lesser Antilles, according to this, and then another one stays out in the main development region. We'll still monitor that first one. Apparently, a few models do have it tracking closer to the Caribbean, so we will keep an eye on that, but I personally don't believe either one of these are going to be a land issue at the moment, but I do, again, think that at least one of these will form into a tropical storm. And then of course our this actually takes it to almost a hurricane, 991. That's a pretty strong tropical storm hitting south central Louisiana, so definitely a slightly more aggressive model run here. And this is your icon. It's also a bit quicker too. This makes landfall here on the icon model. It makes landfall just 90 hours out on the morning of September 11th. If we do the GFS model run, for instance, it has landfall in almost noon of September 12th. So the icon is a little bit faster than some of our other model runs. Here's your last global model. It is the CMC model run 12Z yet again, so it is our newest guidance. It takes, well, quite a few things happen here. Let's see, we get a tropical storm. The CMC does take a tropical storm almost into Houston, far southeastern Texas there, kind of southwestern Louisiana. And then it takes a, wow, same as the GFS, a tropical storm of about 999 millibar there. And then these two obviously stay out to sea. And then this does, of course, impact Texas. So kind of split down the middle. We have some that don't impact land, and then we have some that do, but definitely the main area of interest by far to watch is going to be in the western Gulf of Mexico. Before we dive on into our ensembles, I want to dive on into our hurricane models. Now, this is your H-Wharf. It is typically aggressive, but it is something I do want to look at. Yeah, it has a tropical storm forming by tonight. That is definitely very, very aggressive. Look at that, a 999 tropical storm tonight, right around 3, oh, nope, this is 5 a.m., early tomorrow morning. And then we go ahead and pull forward, keeps that tropical storm status kind of just meandering out here in the southwest Gulf. And now it gets moving into Mexico, swings back out into Texas, the just off the coastline of Texas, and it makes like 3 different landfalls. Now, given all of these are weak, most of these are 1,000 plus millibar. The only time it gets beneath 1,000 is right here, which is, I believe that is far to the southwest of Corpus Christi. That's, yeah, definitely to the southwest of Corpus Christi there. So that wouldn't be like a notable tropical storm, but very interesting portrayal here from the H-Wharf hurricane model. I'm going to dive right on into the H-Mon so that way I don't have to do a cut every 2 seconds here. Here's your H-Mon, which is another hurricane model. It probably would form a tropical storm here. It looks like on the morning of September 9th here, progresses it up to the north, forms it into a bit of a stronger tropical storm, and barely makes landfall on Louisiana. That low pressure stays off the coastline of Louisiana. That gets to what, like a 1001 millibar? That's it? Yeah, I don't think we even got into the 900s there. So that would be probably a weak tropical storm off the coastline of Louisiana. Probably wouldn't see a whole lot of impacts with that particular scenario. Now, I do want you to remember we are looking at deterministic model runs. These are going to change a lot, but really we look at these for consistency between the model runs, and now we're actually pretty close. We're about 120 hours out, if not less, from potential landfall. It hasn't formed yet, so there's still some uncertainties, but it is the point where you start looking for, is there any intensity consistencies and track consistencies? So far, we've seen most of these models take it right on into Texas and Louisiana as a mid to low wind tropical storm. We did have the GFS, which had a hurricane take it into Louisiana and Texas, but that is a little bit of an outlier in terms of strength. Let's go into our HAFSA model run here. Just pull this forward. Tropical storm by tomorrow morning. Again, 996 millibar there. So that would already be a mid-tier tropical storm in the Southwest Gulf tomorrow morning. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to take a while before this gets its act together. 989, a tropical storm here. So that's a pretty strong tropical storm off the coastline of Mexico here on the evening hours of September 9th. And it looks like it's going to take a dual landfall here. A 991 to 997 millibar into northeastern Mexico, moves it back out into the western Gulf, and then another tropical storm landfall, but this time in southern Louisiana, southeastern Texas. So that's two landfalls for a tropical storm on this particular model run. Let's go to the HAFSB now. Go ahead and pull this on out. This is going to take probably a similar approach. Barely even a tropical storm, weak tropical storm into the northeastern portion of Mexico, brings it back out to the western Gulf, and it looks like it's going to take a weak tropical storm into southeastern Texas, southwestern Louisiana, and that is going to be it for the majority of your hurricane models and global models. Now, I can't show them again because these sites do take a little bit longer to render in the 12Z models and ensembles, but your 12Z ensembles are more aggressive. Most of them have a tropical storm hitting Texas, Louisiana. These are your 00Z models and ensembles from yesterday. So just keep in mind, the newer ones are slightly more aggressive. But you could see in most of these ensembles from yesterday, eventually, at some point, they do have a tropical storm forming out here in the main development region. A few of these even have a hurricane intensity and I mean well off to the northeast of the Lesser Antilles and Leeward Islands. So if you are in like the U.S. Virgin Islands, the Northern Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, I would monitor the progression of these two systems out here. However, at this moment, I believe it's highly unlikely that we will see any impacts for the Lesser Antilles or Leeward Islands out of these particular AOIs. Now we're going to go ahead and zoom on into our Western Gulf of Mexico. And as you can see here, your European 00Z ensembles, most of these, bit of uncertainty on exactly what the heck is going on. Honestly, can't even interpret what the heck's going on with these ensembles in the Southwest Gulf. But eventually, the majority of these take a tropical depression to tropical storm right up on into Louisiana and into Texas. Again, the newer models are more aggressive, so we do have a pretty good signal here on the European ensembles of a tropical storm, tropical depression moving on into Texas and Louisiana. Go and show you your new 12Z GFS ensembles here. These are pretty much the same as a European, maybe a little bit west, but they are also stronger. So you'll see a couple of these, couple oranges and yellows in here, indicating a high-end tropical storm to a hurricane, maybe even a category 2 on some of these. I'm pretty sure I see some orangish, almost red in there on some of these ensembles, but the majority have a tropical storm taking it right on into Texas, Louisiana. However, you do see a few that split it off into eastern Mexico, so that's still a possibility as well. So here's your GFS ensembles yet again, 12Z, this time just for your broad view of the Atlantic. And you could see a lot of these are aggressive. Look at just a lot of uncertainty with exactly where it will go between these ensembles. But a lot show a tropical storm, if not hurricane to major hurricane forming and moving into the Atlantic basin there, just to the south of Bermuda. So we'll still monitor that. Like I said, I do believe we'll see a tropical storm out of this, maybe even 2. But I feel like a good amount of these ensembles are just way too aggressive at the moment for those tropical systems well to the east of the Lesser Antilles. Here's a current look at 91L, which is our AOI we're watching in the Southwest Gulf. Not that impressive. We just have some bubbling up cumulonimbus here and some thunderstorms going up in the southwestern portion of the Gulf, just off of the Yucatan Peninsula. Not really anything organized at the moment. Here's your tracks. I'm going to slide it over for you in the center of your screen just so you can see all of those different models and more that we looked at all combined into one plot. Very clear. You can see the H-morph is a little west, but very clear on most of our models that this is going to be heading right on into Texas and Louisiana. So make sure you're watching this closely if you live anywhere from like New Orleans all the way down to the Mexico coastline, eastern side of the Mexico coastline. Definitely a very real possibility that we see a tropical storm right around that intensity. There is a few scenarios where this could potentially move into hurricane status, but I don't want to jump the gun on it just yet. So we're just gonna say tropical storm is likely at the moment. I don't want to jump the gun on it too much, but it is the Gulf. It is a favorable environment. It's almost dead peak of the hurricane season. September 10th is literally the middle of peak hurricane season. So it's definitely possible we see greater than a tropical storm go into Texas and Louisiana. There's your GFS ensembles. We already looked at this with Weather Nerds, but just to give you another look, you can see the majority of them do take a tropical storm, if not greater, into Texas and Louisiana. And then we also have your model guidance intensity. I will bring that up for you just a little bit more. Most of the sites I used here, by the way, Tropical Tidbits and Weather Nerds, that's pretty much most of what I used, as well as College 2 page for the satellite imagery, if you guys would like to see any of that. But again, here's your intensity model guidance. Some of these are very much passive. It shows you why I'm not really jumping the gun on a hurricane yet, but a good amount of these are actually a lot more passive than I thought. But still, we are anticipating at least a really good run for a tropical depression or tropical storm. I don't know if I trust these. These are apparently your 18Z. Look at that. Apparently these are your 18Z intensity guidance models. Those are typically a little bit more, most of the time you see them more aggressive. So I don't really know what's going on here. But I do still think a tropical storm is likely, and the NHC has a 70% chance for a tropical storm or depression to form. So I'm still going to be sticking with a tropical storm's likely to develop. And I think it has a very real shot of moving into Texas and Louisiana towards the middle portion of this upcoming week, right around September 10th and 11th. Alrighty, y'all. Well, that is going to be it for this in-depth look. I am in 30 minutes deep of recording this video. I'll probably edit that down all the way to 20 minutes. So hopefully you did enjoy a more in-depth look at all the models and all the ensembles and all the data that I normally look at to give you those forecasts that I provide most of the time within about 8 to 9 minutes. But just to do a quick recap for those who may have had just a little bit of an issue following along, I do think a tropical storm is going to form out here out of one of these two AOIs as it moves up to the northwest out to sea. I do think there's a very real possibility that one of these general areas of low pressure forms into a tropical storm as it moves into southwestern Mexico. And then I also think Francine, which is our next named storm, will form out of this little blob of showers in the southwest Gulf. And I think that will move along the coastline of Mexico, Texas, and then eventually into southeast Texas and southwestern Louisiana. That's your recap of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Yet again, if you can, hit that like button, especially on your way out. Make sure you shared this video with your family, friends, social media. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.